Good morning, everyone. I was inspired to do this video because this morning, after my morning devotions, I was reading Hebrews 12, which is one of my favorite passages in the Bible, the King James Version, of course. I was also reminded of my experience the other day teaching inequalities to the young men and women who they attend different high schools that are doing them a disservice. I witnessed one student doing a problem so badly that I said to him, "What do you think you're doing?" It was so bad that I had to make a lesson on the proper ways to understand inequalities. So, if you have a, by the way, if you have a short attention span, this is not the video for you. It's not the video for you because I'm not interested in people with short attention span. The first part of the video uh, is going to be some advice for you all because there's some things that are irritating me in the past several years. A decline in the right attitudes of mind that I've seen in this country. And then after we talk about that, we're going to start talking about the properties of the proper way to talk about inequalities. But Hebrews 12 teaches us that discipline is not a punishment, but a pathway to growth. It should remind us that God disciplines those he loves, just as a father disciplines his children, so they may become stronger, wiser, and more righteous. And this same principle applies to life. The hardships we endure, the sacrifices we make, and the challenges we face are not obstacles, they are opportunities. They really are. And when the writer of Hebrews calls us to run with perseverance the race marked out for us, it's a call to embrace the difficult path, to work diligently, and to trust that the struggle itself is shaping us into better men and women. Discipline produces a harvest of righteousness for those trained by it. So, young people, don't shy away from hard work or the uphill climb. It is only through obedience and perseverance, as Hebrews 12 teaches, that we achieve something truly worthy, both in life and in the faith. And it is through obedience and through suffering they've accomplished for God. It is through sacrifice they've achieved. Young people, things in life should never get easy for you. If things are too easy for you, there's something wrong with you. It's the difficult thing that makes life worth living. It's what you work hard for to attain that's valuable when you get it. That which comes too easy in life is generally not worth having. There was a famous Greek orator, Demosthenes. Demosthenes is a Greek he's often held up as the world's greatest orator. And he was a man who had a stammer. So he put pebbles under his tongue. Now, I must confess, I don't know what pebbles under a man's tongue have to do to prevent stammering. He might swallow one and choke to death. I don't recommend this to you, but apparently it worked for Demosthenes. At least that's what the tradition says. He was a great orator, and whatever was necessary to accomplish that, he undertook it. He accomplished it, he held on. But what about today? What about the young American man? What can we say about the young American man of 2025? Although we could extend it to the Western man in general, but since I am in the United States and the United States is my country, I am primarily seeing it in the United States. But too often I see a generation of men more concerned with gaming than grit, more invested in social media than self discipline. They balk at the idea of hard work, and instead, a lot of them, they sit waiting for Uncle Sam to play sugar daddy. Let me tell you something, young men. And yes, I'm talking to the young men specifically because a lot of the failures in our schools, the statistics are showing a great crisis in men. And let me tell you something, young men. When you trade ambition for entitlement, you've sold your birthright for a bowl of government-issued porridge. It's reprehensible. If you are the type of person who believes in government handouts, you can consider yourself a failure. There is no pride in lounging while others labor. There is no honor in asking for handouts when you've got two strong arms and a mind capable of greatness. You're capable of far more than idly waiting for someone else to pick up the tab on your dreams. This nation was built, it wasn't built by men who waited for ease. It wasn't built by men who were looking to government. It was built by men who were looking to God to provide for their families. It was built by men who welcomed the challenge. They embraced suffering and they sought success the hard way. There is no great fortune that you can think of, unless it's inherited. But I'm talking about the origin of every great fortune has been some kind of hard work or some kind of sacrifice or some kind of talent or inventive genius. Americans today, they've become far too entitled, and they blame past generations for their own failure. And hence you get the common cheap meme, the stupid phrase, the idiotic phrase, okay, boomer, really that's all you've got? Is that all you've got? Many so-called, you see the Gen Z people, so-called, and even millennials, they're just not good enough at work because all their lives they've been told how wonderfully precious they are. Only their mama believes that. I certainly don't believe it. I look at the attitudes of a lot of young people. I'm not saying everyone, by the way. Don't get your panties in a bunch. I'm not saying everyone, but a great number, too many, far too many young men have a bad attitude. And the problem is not the job market, it's the market of the jobless. There are opportunities everywhere in America. Education, public education at least, is free. I mean, the taxpayer pays for it, but you don't pay a dime for it. But too many Americans today, they want six-figure salaries for 6 hours of work and a 4-day weekend. It's a joke. Look what happens in Europe. Europe is much poorer in many indicators than the United States. And yes, I know they have a very leisurely sort of lifestyle. Is that really what you aspire to? Is that really what you aspire to? And so the issue, there's not a shortage of jobs. What we have is a surplus of excuses. And that's why you get so many people, they blame other people. They blame H-1B workers. Well, guess what? The H-1B workers do it probably better than you because at least they're somewhat qualified, I would guess. And by the way, this is not an endorsement of open borders. I am certainly not a pro open borders. I believe we do have a lot of problems with that issue. But the problem is that a lot of the people complaining that's all you do. You complain. You do nothing about it. You're not a threat to anyone. You think sitting down at your computer and blaming boomers is going to get you anywhere in life? You're a joke. You need to get up. You need to find work. You need to do something with your life. And it's the same thing. Those of you who are studying mathematics, you know this. In order to be able to understand mathematics and mathematical arguments, it is necessary to have a solid understanding of logic and the way in which known facts can be combined to provide new facts. If you're not a reader, if you're not a person willing to make sacrifices, willing to invest your time, willing to actually be right and know why you're right and care to know why you're right, you should not even be in college. All you're doing is waiting for Uncle Sam, for the taxpayer really, to pay for whatever it is that you think are your dreams. So anyway, that was kind of my little speech for you all today. I hope it was useful, and if it is, please subscribe. And if you don't like my channel, then you don't have to watch it, of course. I get some comments. The other day, it was hilarious. I had a person who just showed their ignorance. They left a comment and they said, how can you even, you're not a mathematician. I mean, this person has no degree on anything. And they were frustrated because they realized by watching my videos how wrong they are. And they've never been told that they're wrong. They're used to their mom telling them or their daddy telling them how wonderful they are, that they're precious beings, that they can never do any harm, that they can never do they can never do wrong, and so they get very irritated when they find out that they're not as great as they thought they were. So if I'm contributing to that, I'm glad that means I'm doing the right thing. That means I'm waking you up. And if you're not going to wake up, you're always going to be the failure you are, and you will remain so for the rest of your life. But anyway, I'm going to start now with the material. Let's get to work. So my objective was to do this in one full video, but I had some things that are probably going to be coming up, so I might have to do this in 2 parts. But let's at least begin with a preliminary notes on what inequalities are and some vocabulary that I think is useful that you might need. Conjunction and disjunction, right? So a conjunction is a statement formed by joining 2 statements by the word and. And the important thing also to remember is for a conjunction to be true, both of the joined statements must be true. So if I told you that -10 is less than 5 and 2 is less than 1, no, that is a false statement. 2 is not less than 1. Now, a disjunction, on the other hand, is a sentence formed by joining two sentences by the word or, not and, but or. So, and in this case, for a disjunction to be true, at least one of the joined statements must be a true statement. So now that you have that, there's a couple of properties that I want you to know about. They are fundamental. And one of them is called the transitive axiom of order. So for all real numbers, A, B, and C, if A is less than B and B is less than C, then A is less than C. And similarly, if you have A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then that means A must also be greater than C. And I put a little example here so you have it, but this is something to, so if you want to pause the video, take some notes, because I'm going to be moving quite fast due to time constraints. But this is the first transitive axiom. All right, now the other issue is the addition. It's called the addition axiom of order. And so for all real numbers, again, A, B, and C, if A is less than B, then that means that when you add A plus C, that's still going to be less than B plus C. If A is greater than B, then A plus C is going to be greater than B plus C. And the interesting thing about this is what happens when each member of the inequality, -5 less than 2, when we multiply it by a non-zero real number. Look what happens in the first case on the left. What I did was, right, I'll give you an example here. -5 is less than 2. So if I multiply by a real number, a non-zero, I multiply, let's say, by 2, I get on the left side -10. If I multiply on the right side the 2 by 2, I get 4, and I get -10 is less than 4. But notice what happens in another example. If I multiply -5 instead of by +2, I multiply by the real number -2, I get -5 times -2. And I get a +10 from that. And then I get on the other side 2 times -2. And now I have 10 is what happens now. I'm comparing 10 and -4. All of a sudden, I must reverse the sign. Originally, I had the less than sign, and now because of this operation, I now have to reverse the sign. And therefore, that is where the rule comes from that hopefully you've heard about, that when you multiply an inequality, that there are two cases. When you multiply each member of an inequality by a positive number, you preserve the direction, you preserve the order or the sense of the inequality. But if you multiply it by a negative number, the direction of the inequality reverses on the number line. So that's going to illustrate our next axiom, which is the multiplication axiom of order. And you can take some notes on this, or you can pause the video. So when you multiply any inequality, really, by a non-zero real number, you must take into account the direction that is associated with the multiplier. So what happens, would you be able to guess what happens when the multiplier is 0? Well, in that case, we have the multiplicative property of 0. When you multiply each member of an inequality, of any inequality, by 0, you get 0. Because 0 equals 0. So these axioms guarantee that you will always produce an equivalent inequality. In other words, an inequality that has the same solution set. All right? So now we can apply that to to transform the equations, right? Generally speaking, you can solve equations, in the same way that you do the other equations, linear equations, for example, or equal equations, which, for example, you have, let's say you had to solve, Okay, let's see, 7z minus 2 and we're going to say that that's less than or equal to 3 parentheses z plus 3 plus 1 over the real numbers. Let's see if I can find it. Well, I'll just use r. All right, we're going to solve this over the real numbers, right? And I want you also to graph the solution set. So take a moment to solve it and let me know what you come up with. Right? You can pause the video. All right, so in this case, we have the original equation. We could use the distributive axiom, right? The distributive property. So if we do that, we have 7z minus 2, and we have less than or equal to 3z plus 9 plus 1. You can simplify the member on the right. By the way, in an equation, the left side and the right side, they're called members, the formal way to describe it. So now you have less than or equal to, and that's going to give you 3z plus 10. Now we can get rid of, we can add 2 to the members. So we have 7z minus 2 plus 2, and that's going to be less than or equal to 3z plus 10 plus 2, which is going to be plus 12. But I'm just breaking it down if you're new to this. Now you simplify. On the left side, you have negative 2 plus 2, that's 0. So you have 7z, and that's less than or equal to 3z plus 12. Now, you have, we're solving for z, so we bring the 3z to the other side. You know that. We're going to subtract 3z from both members. And that's less than or equal to the 12. All right. Now, you have 4z, right? 7z minus 3c gives you 4z, and that's less than or equal to 12. And now it's easy because now you could solve for z, right? And then you divide by 4 on both sides, so you get z is less than or equal to 3. So you would say in this case though, right, because it's less than or equal to, it's all real numbers less than or equal to 3. We use braces to denote sets. And if you wanted to graph this, you could indicate it. Hopefully my drawing comes out neat. Not too bad. But basically we start with, 0 is here, the origin. We have 1, 2, 3. And because 3 is included in the solution set, we need to circle that with a shaded circle. And then we move all the way to the left, right? And it goes to infinity, right? So your interval is negative infinity to positive 3. All right? The other issue that we should touch upon is the ones that have an absolute value symbol, right? There are inequalities that have absolute value. Just like an equation, right? It's kind of as a recap, but remember a linear equation that just has the equal sign. If you had something like 6m minus 3 is equal to 9, right? This is actually an example of a disjunction. Why? Because 2 solutions are possible here. The first case, you have 6m minus 3, can be equal to negative 9, or 6m minus 3 can be equal to positive 9. And if we solve each equation for m, you're going to get either, if you add negative 9 plus 3, you're going to get negative 6. And if you divide by negative 6, you divide by positive 6 rather on both sides, you're going to get negative 1 on this side. So m is equal to negative 1. But in the second case, m is going to equal 2. So in this case, the solution set, you actually have two solutions here. You have negative 1 and 2. Two possibilities here. So when you have an inequality that has the absolute value symbol, such as, let's say, the absolute value of 6m minus 3, it's going to be less than 9. If that's the case, then it's a conjunction. That's why I gave you the vocabulary earlier. The conjunction means that you can rewrite this as negative 9 less than 6m minus 3, which is less than 9. This is a very important property that you can rewrite it this way. And now we're going to, we do the same thing. We have to add 3 to both sides. So we have negative 9 plus 3. That gives us less than 6m, which gives us less than 9 plus 3. And now we have, that's going to give us negative 6, which is less than 6m, which is less than 12. And now we can solve for m. We can divide by 6 on both on 3 sides, really, but to isolate. So we have negative 6 over 6 6m over 6, 12 over 6. And that gives you negative 1 is less than m, which is less than 2. That's how you would write it out. So that means that the solution set is all real numbers between negative 1 and 2. I didn't write the between because I don't have room, but you can fill it in. All right? So in the next part of the video, because I'm running short on time, in the next part of the video, part 2, I will try to upload it tonight. Not sure if I can, but I will try to do it today, the second part. But the second part of the video is going to be, originally I had envisioned a longer video, but something came up. What I will do is, we need to talk about a lot more properties. This is only the beginning. This is only the tip of the iceberg. So that we have a lot more to discuss. We have to talk about interval notation. We have to talk about open and closed sets. But hopefully now you have some kind of foundation. Please watch this video before you watch part 2, because part 2 is actually going to be, we're going to build upon that. All right. So thank you, everyone. As usual, we are growing. This channel is growing thanks to you. And I love the participation. I am so blessed to have all of you watching. And I will do, like I said, I will do my very best to provide you with the contents that you need for your math class. At least, give you a serious, more logical foundations. I know that for a fact that many of these things, many of these axioms are not even covered in school. They just ask you to solve a few problems and that's it. That's ridiculous, and it's a disservice to you. They are cheating you out of your education. Thank you all, and we'll be in touch later on probably. So watch out for my new video later if there's time. If not, I'll do it eventually.